Welcome back to my garden. This is the first time I've been outside in about a week, probably a little longer. There was no garden tour last week as I've been stuck in bed for reasons you don't want to know. And the first thing I see when I get out here is these troublemakers trying to get into my garden. We just recently picked up a whole ton of cinder blocks. The plan is to line the garden with a double layer of cinder blocks. The cinder blocks around the edge should help keep all the wood chips in to the designated garden area, and once they are stacked that closely to the fence, should have no worries about chickens using them to get into the garden. So immediately as I walk into the garden, I can see that my watermelons, they're still growing and still looking good, and they're getting quite large and very heavy. And the second thing I immediately notice is how terrible my cantaloupe patch is looking. It is not happy looking whatsoever, so I'm not sure any of these will be getting to harvest, sadly. It appears I have forgotten to tie up this one tomato plant, so it has fallen off the trellis, and yeah, it looks like some of my other tomato plants have gotten kind of droopy and have fallen over a bit. Last time I was out here about a week ago, I did have a pathway through the garden. Now it's a little overgrown again. My ground cherries have a few little fruit on there, but I'm not sure they'll be making it to a harvest before the frost. And it looks like I'll be getting at least one yellow zucchini this year. Some of the zucchini that were large the last time I was out in the garden are still in here and still growing and getting larger. And the huckleberries that are growing through this zucchini plant look like they might be getting pretty close to being able to harvest them. Got a lot of tomatoes in there. Looks like I'll be doing quite a few little fried green tomatoes. But again, I do have quite a few in there that are definitely ready to harvest. Next year, one of the changes I will be making to the garden is more support for the tomato plants. So that's where the top of the fence should be. And it's way down here. And I'm not sure if the camera's gonna pick it up as well as it should, but that fence is very, very bowed. So I've got lots and lots of tomatoes hiding in there, but I have lost a few as I've been unable to get out here and harvest regularly. My eggplants are still looking good. Still have some lovely eggplants coming in on those. I don't think anything's looking quite as big as that last one I harvested though. My squash plants have started to look rather terrible from all the cold and rainy, crappy weather we've been having. You can now kind of see my pepper plant, and I do have another one tucked in there underneath that eggplant. So far it doesn't look like I'm going to be getting any peppers off of those, which is kind of disappointing because those are my two hot pepper plants. And over here this is where my beans were growing, and they're still growing in here, and I believe I did see a pod or two. Oh, right there. There is a bean pod. Again, lots of ripe tomatoes. And you can kind of see here how the top of the fence is just kind of fallen this way. Yeah, next year I could definitely use at least an extra support or two out here. Around the front of the garden, you can really see all those pumpkins everywhere, and see that some of the squash plants are definitely not looking so good, because it's been very wet out here, so any little bit of powdery mildew that was happening has gotten a lot worse, but I'm not too concerned at this point. Lots of paste tomatoes to harvest. Hopefully once I get those pulled off, some of these other ones will start turning a little bit, and hopefully I'll get some more ripe tomatoes and have to fry up less green tomatoes. Got a few more peppers coming in, which is nice. It's a little easier to kind of see the pepper plants now that some of the squash plants are dying back from this really massive leafed squash. I believe this giant thing is forming. I don't think I have anything else that looks like this in my garden, so another mystery. I'm not sure what it is. This year my okra has been rather disappointing. I think that, oh, there we go. That and the other little pod on the other side there are like the only two pods I'm getting off of this plant. It just seems to be kind of dying back and not looking so happy. You can see it has a massive, healthy looking stalk on it. It was growing really well, and then just didn't really do much. I did get it in the garden a little late, same with its friend here. It did a little better, except the only pod that I've seen on this one is this massive one, which I probably can't even eat, because it'll probably be real seedy and woody, and I should probably just leave it at this point. But yeah, very disappointed in my okra this year. I'll get it in the ground earlier next year, so hopefully I'll get something out of them. My sweet potatoes are still looking really good. The radishes that I never harvested have just kind of fallen over, and now there's a million new little starts coming up trying to flower. I would say my tomatillos did really well this year. Looks like I've got another good-sized harvest on the plants right now. Like the rest of my garden, my squash plants are not looking so good anymore, and are definitely not appreciating the cold, wet weather. It did take me a while to get back here and start really thinning the plants out, so there was a bit of powdery mildew, and that's just gotten worse with all the wet weather we've been having. But I'm not too concerned. What is growing is not going to be affected by it. This year's garden, I let all my squash plants just kind of grow wild and grow however they wanted. And next year, I will definitely be trimming and altering the way that I allow the garden to grow next year. Yeah, I've really appreciated my tomatillos this year. Wasn't sure how they'd turn out, but so far they've been really good to me. This squash is still just getting bigger and bigger, and I'm still not sure exactly what it is, but it's definitely turned a rather pink color. Same with its other little friend there. And this other thing that I was thinking was a spaghetti squash. I'm really not too sure anymore, because the thing is also getting massive. Ooh, its little friend there is not looking so happy. And if any of you follow us on Instagram, this is the squash that almost got eaten by that table over there in that storm. But it's still doing well. Its other friend, not so much. And that just released from the vine, so I would say that's done growing and not looking so happy. Oh, and that one doesn't look so happy either. So it seems like every other fruit on the vine is not looking so happy. That's kind of interesting. This front zucchini plant is not looking so happy because it was really close to all of my squash plants that did not get trimmed soon enough, so it has shared its powdery mildew. But that's okay. I still have some big zucchinis in there, which will be more than enough for me. The radish that was planted right in there has fallen over and is just covered with massive seed pods. My russet potato there is doing really well, same with my sweet potato, so it looks like I'll be leaving both of those as long as I can. So in my little crab here, my crab garden, I have some radishes in the front there, and you can start to see the tops of some of those, so I might actually be able to harvest some of those rather soon. My peas are still looking really good. My onion sets that I put around the outside are all springing up. Those little green things growing in the back, those I believe are all carrots. That taller green leafy thing in the middle, I believe that is a Russian kale or something. And it's got a few little green caterpillars on there, but I'm not worried about picking them off. They've just been eating everything this year. There's even some on the radishes. You can see lots of worm damage on there. But yeah, my little crab garden. Most of those tomato plants I just stuck in this dirt here because it was open, are not looking so good. The marigold, on the other hand, is looking rather happy. The smaller cuttings looking not too bad. If it was earlier in the season, I'm sure they'd do better. And it looks like some of my little kale starts in there are not looking so good. Looks like some of them have already gotten nibbled on by caterpillars. One thing I noticed in the garden that was rather interesting was these Japanese kabachas. They seem to form rather strange later in the season, but when they form earlier, they have that nice, proper, round-looking shape and pattern. I've got some tiny little sugar babies growing in the garden, but I'm not sure if those are going to make it to harvest or not before the cold weather really hits. My tree tomatoes are looking good. It looks like I've missed a few. They'll go to the chickens, and I've got a big mushroom growing in the middle of my garden here. Another little melon hiding in there. Yeah, lots of little sugar babies hiding in the garden. Hopefully some of them will get to eat, but I'm not too sure. My pumpkin plant's looking good. My strawberries are looking good, but I'm not sure I'm getting those in the ground this year. I think that'll be next year. Hopefully the cantaloupes get there. I'm really disappointed about how much they've died back already, but at least the watermelons are still growing, so we should at least get to harvest those. Well, that's all for today's garden tour. Thank you for watching. Please like and share my video. Subscribe for future content, and I'll catch you next week.